Have you ever ended a day feeling completely drained, and yet when you look back, you can't even figure out what you actually accomplished? You weren't building something meaningful. You weren't fighting a life or death battle. But somehow your energy is gone. It's not that you're weak. It's not even that life is too hard. It's that your energy is leaking through tiny, constant cuts you don't even notice. The wrong conversations, the wrong obligations, the endless explaining, chasing, and reacting. Here's a truth the Stoics understood centuries ago. Your energy is more valuable than your time. You can lose an hour and bounce back tomorrow, but waste your energy on the wrong people, the wrong battles, or the wrong thoughts, and you lose something much harder to recover: your focus, your self-respect, your peace. In our hyper-connected world, people mistake constant noise for progress. But the ones who really win in life, they move with quiet precision. They choose their battles. They don't run after what doesn't serve them. And sometimes, the most powerful thing they say is nothing at all. Think about it. Have you ever met someone who stays calm when everyone else is losing their head? Who doesn't rush to explain themselves? Who doesn't react to every insult or provocation? That's not luck. That's training. That's energy mastery. In this video, we're going to break down the Stoic strategies for protecting your energy like a fortress, so you can stop feeling drained, start feeling in control, and walk through life with the kind of quiet strength that turns heads without saying a word. Part 1. Cut energy leeches without guilt. You can't build a strong, steady mind while keeping people in your life who are constantly draining it. It's like trying to run a marathon while someone is quietly poking holes in your water bottle. You may not notice at first, but mile after mile, you're running on fumes, and eventually you'll collapse. When we talk about energy leeches or energy vampires, most people imagine loud, overbearing personalities, the kind who dominate conversations or dump their problems on you the moment they see you. And yes, those people exist. But in my experience, the more dangerous ones are quieter, subtler. They smile in your face, but every interaction leaves you feeling a little heavier, a little smaller, a little more distracted from the life you actually want to live. Here's the part nobody tells you. Just because someone has been in your life for a long time doesn't mean they've earned the right to stay. 10 years of friendship doesn't outweigh the fact that you feel worse every time you talk to them. Sharing DNA with someone doesn't give them permission to treat you like a punching bag for their insecurities. I had a neighbor a few years back, let's call him Paul. On the surface, he was friendly. He'd wave when I drove by, we'd chat in the driveway. But every single conversation somehow turned into him complaining about something. His boss, his wife, the weather, the price of groceries, and every single time he wanted me to agree with him. If I tried to steer the conversation towards solutions or gratitude, he'd brush it off and double down on the negativity. At first, I thought I was just being neighborly by listening. But one day, after spending 20 minutes hearing him rant, I walked back inside my house and realized my own mood had tanked. I was irritated with my work. I was annoyed at my family. And none of that irritation belonged to me, it was Paul's. And I had just let him pour it straight into my head. That's how energy leeches work. They don't just take your time, they take your emotional clarity. And if you're not careful, you start living under a cloud that isn't even yours. The Stoics had no problem cutting people off, not out of cruelty, but out of alignment. Seneca famously said, "Associate with people who are likely to improve you. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve." That's the test. If someone's presence in your life consistently makes you better, calmer, more focused, more disciplined, keep them close. If not, you have a choice to make. Now, I know the pushback, but Justin, what if they're family? What if they're old friends? Doesn't loyalty count for something? Sure, loyalty matters. But loyalty without boundaries isn't loyalty. It's self-sabotage. If someone you love is hurting you, enabling their behavior isn't kindness. In fact, it might be the very thing keeping them from facing their own growth. Think of it like this. If you had a leak in your roof that was slowly flooding your home, you wouldn't ignore it just because that roof had been over your head for 20 years. You'd fix it, and if it couldn't be fixed, you'd replace it. You have to treat your emotional environment the same way. Cutting out an energy leech doesn't mean announcing it to the world. You don't need to send them a dramatic text or deliver a speech about your new boundaries. You simply become unavailable for the conversations, the interactions, the invitations that drain you. You protect your peace quietly. You let the space between you grow. This is especially important in the American culture of constant availability. Texting back within minutes, liking posts, attending every gathering because they invited you. One of the quickest ways to reclaim your energy is to stop living like your calendar belongs to someone else. Here's a personal example. Years ago, I had a college buddy who loved spontaneous hangouts. Sounds harmless, right? But here's the thing. He never considered whether it was a good time for me. I could be mid-project, on a roll, and he'd call saying, "Hey, I'm 10 minutes away, let's grab a drink." If I said no, he'd act hurt or make jokes about me turning boring. It took me a while to realize that every time I caved, I was training him and myself to believe his schedule mattered more than mine. So I stopped caving. I started saying, "I can't today, let's plan for next week." At first, he pushed back, but eventually the dynamic shifted. I wasn't available on demand, and that forced him to respect my time. When you start cutting out or limiting access to energy leeches, some people will not take it well. Expect it. When you stop providing free emotional labor, people who relied on it will feel the loss. They might guilt you. They might try to make you feel selfish. That's just proof they were taking more than they were giving. The Stoic approach is simple. You do what's necessary to preserve your inner fortress. You don't let the noise of someone else's chaos dictate the state of your mind. And you don't apologize for protecting your mental health, because nobody else will do it for you. If you want a practical starting point, try this. Make a mental list of the 5 people you spend the most time with, physically or digitally. Ask yourself, do I feel lighter or heavier after being with them? If the answer is heavier more than half the time, that's your cue to create space. Another tip, stop sharing every update about your life with people who haven't earned that trust. In our culture, oversharing has become the norm, but not everyone deserves a front row seat to your journey. Some will quietly root for you. Others will quietly root against you. Both will smile to your face. Silence is how you protect yourself from feeding the wrong one. I've seen this play out countless times in the workplace. You share a personal win with a coworker. Maybe you're taking a big trip or you got approved for a promotion. If that coworker is an energy leech, they'll find a way to sour it. Must be nice to have the money for that, or hope you can handle the stress of the new role. Those little digs stick in your brain longer than they should. Before you know it, you're doubting yourself over something you were once excited about. This is why, in the Stoic mindset, cutting energy leeches is less about the person and more about the preservation of your mind. It's not about punishing them, it's about protecting you. And here's the thing. Once you remove these drains, something amazing happens. You start to notice the people who do energize you. The friend who leaves you inspired after every conversation. The mentor who challenges you without tearing you down. The colleague who celebrates your wins without jealousy. These are your allies, and you can only recognize them fully once you've stopped drowning in the noise from everyone else. So here's your takeaway for this first principle. Your energy is finite. Spend it like it's money you can never get back. If you wouldn't give a stranger your last $100, Don't give them your last ounce of focus or peace. Part 2. Be ruthless about what you feed your mind. If your mind were a house, would you leave the front door wide open for anyone to walk in? Probably not. You'd protect it. You'd decide who's welcome, who stays out, and what kind of atmosphere you want inside. But most people treat their mind like a public park, open to anyone, any idea, any piece of gossip, any negativity that happens to blow in. Then they wonder why they feel scattered, anxious, and unfocused. The Stoics understood something we often forget. Your thoughts shape your reality. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The things you think about determine the quality of your mind." What you let in, through what you read, watch, listen to, and talk about, eventually becomes the lens you see life through. Think about the average American morning. Many people start their day by grabbing their phone before they even sit up. They check the news, see 3 negative headlines, open social media, and scroll past an argument about politics, a post that makes them jealous, and an ad that makes them feel they're missing out. That's all before coffee. It's like eating donuts for breakfast and then wondering why you feel sluggish at noon. Mental junk food has the same effect, except it clutters your mind instead of your arteries. I'll give you a personal example. Years ago, I had a habit of turning on cable news the moment I got home. I told myself it was just to stay informed. But after a while, I noticed I was on edge every evening, agitated about events I couldn't control. My patience was shorter, my focus weaker. I didn't feel informed. I felt invaded, so I stopped. I replaced that hour with listening to an audiobook on history or philosophy while cooking dinner. Within 2 weeks, my evenings felt lighter. I wasn't less aware of the world, I was just no longer feeding my mind a steady diet of stress. The same goes for entertainment. If every show you binge revolves around betrayal, greed, and chaos, don't be surprised if you start viewing people through a lens of distrust. If every song you listen to is about heartbreak and loss, you might find yourself carrying sadness that doesn't even belong to you. I'm not saying you need to cut out all fun or avoid anything negative. Life has both light and dark. But you do need to be intentional, curating what you let in so it serves you, not sabotages you. One of the easiest ways to start is with your social media feed. Take 10 minutes today to unfollow or mute accounts that leave you feeling worse after you see them. That influencer whose life makes you feel less than? Gone. That friend who posts constant drama? Mute. That news account that thrives on outrage? Remove it from your daily diet. This isn't about being fragile. It's about being focused. You wouldn't drink from a muddy river if you wanted clean water. So why let muddy thoughts flow into your head all day? Here's another American example. I know a guy named Eric who runs his own contracting business. He used to have talk radio playing in his truck all day, hours of heated debates, doomsday predictions, and angry callers. He thought it kept him company on long drives. But one day he realized he was carrying that same argumentative energy into meetings with clients. He wasn't listening as well. He was interrupting more. And he was getting into pointless debates about unrelated topics. He switched to podcasts about leadership, fitness, and business strategy. Within a month, not only did his mood improve, but his client relationships did too. Why? Because he was bringing in better input, and it was showing up in his output. The Stoic mindset here is simple. Your mind is a garden. If you plant weeds, gossip, outrage, fear, you'll harvest weeds. If you plant strong, healthy seeds, discipline, gratitude, wisdom, you'll harvest peace and clarity. To apply this, try what I call the content audit. For 1 week, track what you consume. What are you watching? What are you reading? Who are you talking to? What's in your background? TV, music, podcasts? Then ask, Does this make me calmer, wiser, and more focused? Or more anxious, distracted, and reactive? If it's the latter, it's time to cut it down or cut it out. And here's something most people miss. It's not just about avoiding the negative. It's about replacing it with something nourishing. The brain doesn't like empty space. If you simply try to stop scrolling without finding a positive replacement, you'll slide right back into old habits. Instead of 30 minutes of doom scrolling, try 30 minutes of learning a skill you've always wanted. Whether it's cooking a new dish, practicing a few words in a foreign language, or finally reading that book you bought 2 years ago. Instead of a podcast full of celebrity gossip, try one on history, science, or philosophy. I remember a woman I met at a workshop in Chicago. She told me she swapped her nightly reality TV for a guided meditation app. She thought she'd hate it at first, but after 2 weeks, she was sleeping better, waking up earlier, and even handling her morning commute with more patience. She said, "It's like my brain isn't buzzing all the time anymore." That's the power of feeding your mind better fuel. The Stoics would remind you, you can't control every event, but you can control what you give your attention to. And in our time, attention is the gateway to your inner world. Guard it like a fortress. So here's your challenge for this week. Be ruthless about what you allow into your mind. Audit it, filter it. Replace what drains you with what strengthens you. Because the quality of your thoughts will quietly shape the quality of your entire life. Part 3. Master the pause before reacting. One of the fastest ways to lose your energy is by overreacting. Not just reacting, overreacting. Someone says something stupid, and suddenly you're in a 30-minute argument. A driver cuts you off, and you're still replaying it in your head an hour later. A friend forgets to text back, and you start spiraling into theories about why they're ignoring you. The Stoics were masters at avoiding this trap. They understood that it's not the event itself that drains you, it's your response to it. Epictetus said it best. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Think of your emotional energy like money in a wallet. Every time you get pulled into an argument or snap back at someone, it's like handing out $100 bills to random strangers on the street. Would you do that with your cash? No. So why do it with your peace? Here's the secret weapon. The pause. That tiny gap between stimulus and response. It's small, but it's everything. Let me give you a real-world example. A few years ago, I was at a coffee shop in Denver. The place was packed, and I was working on my laptop when someone bumped my table hard enough to spill coffee on my shirt. I looked up, ready to unleash a sharp comment, and then I paused. I took one breath. In that space, I noticed two things. First, the guy was clearly distracted and flustered, juggling 2 kids in a diaper bag. Second, it wasn't personal. My anger dissolved in that pause. I just waved it off and cleaned up. Now imagine if I hadn't paused. Maybe I would have made a sarcastic remark. Maybe he would have snapped back. Suddenly, we're both in a bad mood over something that was never worth the energy. That's what the pause protects you from. It's not about suppressing emotion, it's about giving yourself time to choose the right action instead of the fastest one. You've probably seen this in reverse too. Maybe you've sent an email when you were frustrated, only to regret it the moment you hit send. Or maybe you've gotten into a heated group text, and 10 minutes later you realize it wasn't even about the thing you were arguing over. That's what happens when you skip the pause. You give control of your actions to your emotions, instead of your judgment. The Stoic approach is to build a habit. Whenever you feel that heat rise, anger, annoyance, hurt, don't respond immediately. Breathe. Step back. Ask yourself 2 questions. Will this matter in 5 days, 5 weeks, or 5 years? Does this person's opinion change the truth of who I am? Most of the time, the answer to both is no. Here's another example from everyday American life. Road rage. We've all been there. Someone cuts you off, and for the next few miles you're fuming, maybe even speeding up to teach them a lesson. But think about it. What did that actually get you? Your heart rate's up, your day's off track, and the other driver probably isn't even thinking about you. They've moved on. You're the only one still carrying it. I once knew a guy named Steve who used to have terrible road rage. I suggested he try the Stoic pause whenever someone cut him off. Instead of reacting, he'd say out loud, maybe they're rushing to the hospital, maybe they just got bad news. 9 times out of 10, it cooled him down instantly, because the story in his head shifted from attack to understanding. The pause isn't weakness, it's control. In fact, the slower you are to react, the more powerful your eventual action becomes. If you pause before answering a snide comment at work, you might realize that the best response isn't a comeback, it's silence. If you pause before firing back at a partner during an argument, you might decide that listening will get you further than defending yourself. Of course, this takes practice. The modern world trains us for the opposite. Instant replies, hot takes, reacting in real time. Social media rewards speed, not thoughtfulness. That's why practicing the pause feels unnatural at first. But the more you do it, the more you'll notice something amazing. Life starts to feel lighter, fewer regrets, less emotional whiplash, more peace. One technique I recommend is the 5-second rule for emotions. Not the food on the floor rule, the real one for life. When you feel triggered, take 5 slow breaths before speaking, typing, or acting. Those 20 or 30 seconds can save you hours or days of unnecessary stress. Another method is what I call mental zoom out. When you pause, imagine pulling a camera back from the situation. You're no longer inside the heat of the moment. You're watching it from a distance, like a scene in a movie. Ask yourself, if this were on screen, how would the wise, self-controlled character respond? Then do that. Remember, the pause doesn't mean you never act. It means you act with precision. Sometimes the right move is to stand your ground. Other times, it's to walk away without a word. But without the pause, you can't tell which is which. The Stoics were warriors in their own way. Not because they fought every battle, but because they knew when not to fight. And that's what mastering the pause does for you. It turns you from someone who's always reacting to life into someone who chooses their moves carefully. So the next time you feel that urge to fire back, whether it's at a stranger online, a coworker in a meeting, or a family member pushing your buttons, remember this: your energy is currency. Don't spend it on what won't matter tomorrow. Pause, breathe, and protect your peace. Part 4. Be ruthless with your priorities. Most people think they're tired because they're doing too much. The truth, they're tired because they're doing too much of the wrong things. Every yes you give away is a no to something else. And if you're not careful, you'll spend your life saying yes to everyone else's priorities while your own goals quietly die in the background. The Stoics were crystal clear about this. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you don't have a consistent goal in life, you can't live it in a consistent way." In other words, if you don't decide what matters, everything will start to matter, and you'll drown in the noise. Here's a personal example. Years ago, I was saying yes to everything. Coffee meetings with people I barely knew, quick phone calls that lasted an hour, volunteer work I didn't really care about but felt guilty saying no to. On paper, it looked like I was busy and connected. In reality, I was exhausted and falling behind on the work that actually mattered to me. It hit me one Sunday night when I realized I had spent 0 hours that week on my personal projects, but I'd spent over 15 hours doing things for other people. That's when I learned the power of being ruthless with my priorities. Being ruthless doesn't mean being selfish. It means being clear. It means knowing your top 3 priorities in any season of life and protecting them like a guard at the gate. Let's make this practical. Imagine you run a small bakery in Austin. Your priorities might be perfecting your product, growing your customer base, spending quality time with your family. If a request comes in that doesn't serve one of those 3, you politely decline. That might mean skipping the neighborhood trivia night because you need rest. It might mean turning down a wholesale offer that sounds exciting but would pull your focus away from your core business. Here's the thing. People won't always understand. In American culture, busy is worn like a badge of honor. Say you're busy and people nod in respect. Say you're focused and they might look at you like you're being cold. But the Stoics didn't live for mass approval. They lived for alignment between their actions and their values. One of my favorite real-life examples comes from a friend named Linda. She's a nurse in Chicago who used to pick up every extra shift offered, even when she was exhausted. Why? Because she didn't want to disappoint her coworkers. But it was burning her out, physically and emotionally. Finally, she made a rule. No more than 4 shifts a week, no matter what. At first, people complain. But after a month, Linda noticed something. She was sharper at work, more patient with her patients, and finally had energy for her own life. Her priorities, health, family, and excellence in her job were being served instead of sacrificed. The Stoics saw time as the most precious resource. But here's the twist. They knew energy was even more important. You can have time to work on your goals, but if your energy has been drained by meaningless obligations, you won't have the focus to do it well. So how do you get ruthless with your priorities without feeling like the bad guy? Here's a simple system. Identify your top 3 non-negotiables for the next 90 days. Not 10 things. 3. Schedule them first. Put them on your calendar before anything else. Evaluate every new request against those 3 priorities. If it doesn't fit, it's a no. Let's say one of your priorities is improving your health. If a coworker invites you out for drinks on a night you plan to go to the gym, you decline. Not because you don't like them, but because you've already said yes to something more important. This is where American culture can trip people up. We've been taught to equate being nice with saying yes. But the Stoic version of kindness isn't about pleasing everyone in the short term. It's about living in a way that's true to your values, so you can contribute to others from a place of strength. Another thing to watch for is disguised distractions. These are things that seem productive, but actually pull you off track. Answering every email instantly. Saying yes to quick projects that balloon into hours of work. Going to networking events with no clear reason other than you never know. A friend of mine, Tom, runs a marketing agency in Portland. He used to say yes to every networking event in town. He thought it was building connections, but in reality, he was just collecting business cards he'd never use, eating bad hors d'oeuvres, and getting home too late to work on proposals for actual clients. Once he cut out 80% of those events, his revenue went up because he finally had the energy to focus on his real work. Being ruthless with your priorities also means protecting time for rest. That might sound unproductive, but the Stoics knew recovery is part of the discipline. A rested mind makes better decisions, and better decisions protect your priorities. So here's your takeaway. Stop confusing motion with progress. Being everywhere for everyone all the time is the fastest way to burn out. Instead, get clear on your top priorities and guard them with everything you've got. When you live like this, something shifts. You stop feeling like life is happening to you and start feeling like you're steering it. You're no longer scattered, you're intentional. And that's where real power begins. Part 5. Say no without apology. If you want to master your energy, You have to get comfortable saying a word most people struggle with: no. And not the no that comes wrapped in nervous laughter, an overlong explanation, or a half promise to make it up to them. I'm talking about a clear, steady, unapologetic no, the kind that protects your priorities and your peace without guilt. Here's the problem. In American culture, we've been trained to see yes as polite and no as selfish. From childhood, we're taught to share our toys, join the group, go along with the plan. That conditioning runs deep. But the truth is, saying yes when you want to say no is one of the fastest ways to betray yourself. The Stoics knew this. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And part of mastering yourself is mastering your commitments. Think about this. Every yes is a promise. It's a slice of your time, energy, and attention that you can't get back. If you give away too many of those slices, you'll end up with nothing left for what truly matters. I'll give you a real example. A friend of mine, Sarah, is a graphic designer in Los Angeles. She used to say yes to every freelance project, even when the pay was bad or the client's vision didn't excite her. She thought she was being smart by keeping work flowing in. But after months of saying yes to everything, she was burned out and resentful. And, ironically, too drained to take on the projects she actually cared about. One day, she tried something different. A company reached out for a rush job with a low budget. Instead of her usual, "Sure, I'll make it work," she replied, "Thanks for thinking of me, but I can't take this on right now." No excuses, no fake scheduling conflicts, just a direct, respectful no. The surprising part? The company came back later with a better offer, and Sarah realized something important. Saying no doesn't always close a door. It often just sets the terms for a healthier relationship. If you've been a lifelong people pleaser, this won't feel natural at first. You might worry about disappointing people. You might feel like you owe them an explanation. But here's the truth. The people who respect you will understand. The ones who don't are often the same people who benefited from your lack of boundaries. Here's where it gets practical. You don't need to be rude, but you also don't need to over-explain. Instead of anytime, "I'm so sorry, I wish I could. Maybe next time," you say, "No, that doesn't work for me right now." Instead of, "I'd love to, but I'm just so busy and my schedule's a mess," you say, "Thanks for asking, but I'm focusing on other priorities right now." Short, direct, kind. The Stoic mindset is that you don't owe anyone a courtroom defense of your decisions. You owe yourself the life that aligns with your values. And sometimes that means choosing peace over pleasing. Let me share another everyday example. A neighbor knocks on your door asking if you can help them move some furniture this weekend. You've already set aside that time for rest and personal projects. Old you might have said yes out of guilt. Stoic you says, "I can't help this weekend, but I hope it goes smoothly for you." No excuses about your bad back or having plans, just a clear boundary. And here's what happens over time. People start to respect your no. They might test it at first, but when they see you're consistent, they stop pushing. They know your yes actually means something because you don't hand it out like candy. This isn't just about protecting your time. It's about protecting the quality of your yes. When you say yes sparingly, it becomes more valuable. People know you're there because you want to be, not because you felt trapped into it. One of my favorite lines on this comes from an older mentor of mine. He said, "Every yes costs you something. Make sure it's worth the price." That stuck with me because I realized my energy is like a bank account. I only have so much to spend in a day. If I spend it all on obligations that don't align with my purpose, I'm bankrupt before I ever get to what matters. The Stoics would call this self-governance. It's the discipline to live by your own principles, instead of being dragged along by the expectations of others. So here's your challenge. The next time someone asks you for something that doesn't align with your priorities, practice saying no, without apology, without over-explaining, without guilt. You'll feel uncomfortable at first, but with time, you'll start to feel something else. Freedom. Because when you learn to say no without apology, you're not just rejecting an invitation. You're accepting ownership over your life. And that, in the Stoic playbook, is one of the highest forms of power. Part 6. Guard your morning like a soldier guards his post. Most people lose their day before it even starts. Not because something catastrophic happens, but because they hand over their attention the moment they wake up. The alarm goes off, and before their feet touch the ground, they're already checking emails, scrolling social media, and reacting to other people's agendas. In less than 60 seconds, they've shifted from rest to reaction, and the tone for the entire day is set. The Stoics treated mornings differently. To them, the first hour after waking was sacred, a time to prepare their mind for the battles ahead. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, didn't start his mornings with gossip or complaints. He started them by writing in his journal, reminding himself of the kind of man he wanted to be that day. If a man ruling millions could find time for a morning ritual, you and I have no excuse. Think about it. Your mornings are the only time of day when the world hasn't yet started pulling at you. Once you step into the stream of demands, messages, and noise, it's much harder to get your focus back. That's why guarding your mornings is like a soldier guarding a gate. What you allow in during those first moments determines the strength of your defenses for the rest of the day. I learned this the hard way. Years ago, I had a habit of checking my phone immediately after waking. The first thing I'd see was a text from a client asking for changes, an email with bad news, or a social media post that irritated me. And just like that, my mood was hijacked before I'd even had breakfast. One day, I decided to try something radical. No phone for the first 30 minutes after waking. Instead, I'd get up, drink a glass of water, stretch for a few minutes, and write down 3 things I wanted to accomplish that day. That small change completely altered my mornings. I walked into the day on my own terms, not someone else's. Here's the thing. You don't need a complicated 5 a.m. millionaire routine. You just need an intentional one. The Stoics weren't trying to be trendy. They were building mental armor. Here's how you can do the same. 1. Claim your first 30 minutes. No phone, no TV, no news. This is your mental warm-up. Even if you only have 10 minutes before you need to start your day, keep them distraction-free. 2. Move your body. You don't have to run 5 miles. Even a few minutes of stretching or a short walk gets blood flowing to your brain and signals that you're awake and in control. 3. Set your intention. Ask yourself, what truly matters today? Not what's urgent, but what's important. The Stoics believe that clarity in the morning leads to strength in the evening. 4. Read or reflect on something nourishing. It could be a page from a philosophy book, a meaningful quote, or a short meditation. Feed your mind something worth carrying through the day. I know a construction foreman named Mike, who swears by his morning routine. He gets up at 5:30, makes a cup of coffee, and sits on his porch for 15 minutes in silence before the chaos of the day begins. No phone, no radio, just him, the quiet, and his thoughts. He says it's the best decision he ever made because it gives him a calm anchor, no matter how hectic his worksite gets later.
Contrast that
with his old routine, waking up late, rushing to get dressed, answering work calls in the car before he even reached the job site. Back then, he said, I felt like the day owned me. Now, he owns the day. Guarding your morning also means being ruthless about what you don't allow in. If you start with bad news, you prime your brain to look for more of it. If you start with comparison, scrolling through social media, you prime your brain to measure yourself against others all day. One study even found that people who check their phones within 10 minutes of waking are more likely to feel anxious and distracted throughout the day. The Stoics didn't need research to know this. They could see it in the way people carried themselves. Here's a small but powerful habit. Choose one thought to carry into the day. It could be a Stoic quote, like, you have power over your mind, not outside events, or a personal mantra like, I will not waste energy on what I can't control. Repeat it as you get ready, and let it be your compass when challenges arise. Remember, guarding your morning is about discipline, not perfection. Some days you'll slip. Some mornings you'll wake up late and have to rush. That's okay. The point is to make intentional mornings your default, so even when life gets messy, you have a foundation to return to. So ask yourself, what's the first thing you want in your head tomorrow morning? The latest political scandal? A text that pulls you into someone else's drama? Or a moment of clarity that sets the tone for everything that follows? Guard your morning like a soldier guards his post, because once that gate is breached, it's hard to take the fortress back. Part 7. Stop explaining yourself to everyone. One of the biggest drains on your energy isn't physical work, a busy schedule, or even toxic people. It's the time and mental space you waste explaining yourself to people who will never understand, or who don't deserve an explanation in the first place. Here's the hard truth. Most people aren't looking for your reasoning because they care. They're looking for it because they want to challenge it, debate it, or poke holes in it. And every time you take the bait, you're giving away a piece of your peace. The Stoics didn't play that game. They believed your life is lived by your actions, not by your arguments. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." In other words, show them through your behavior, not your words. Think about how much energy you spend justifying yourself. You explain why you didn't attend that party, why you didn't respond to a text right away, why you chose a certain job, a certain partner, or a certain lifestyle. Every time, it's like opening the door to your mental home and inviting someone to rearrange the furniture. I remember a friend, let's call him Chris, who decided to stop drinking. Not because of a health crisis, not because of an addiction, but simply because he didn't like how it made him feel the next day. Sounds simple, right? But every time he turned down a drink, people demanded a reason. Why? Are you on some kind of cleanse? Come on, just one. At first, he'd go into a long explanation about health, focus, and self-control. But it never convinced anyone. They just kept pushing. Eventually, he started answering with 2 words. No thanks. That was it. And suddenly the conversations ended faster, and his peace stayed intact. Explaining yourself constantly is like carrying around a giant "convince me" sign. It invites challenges you don't need. Here's a relatable workplace example. You decide to skip a meeting because the agenda doesn't involve your department. You tell your boss, "I'm focusing on a client project that's due today." Seems reasonable, but now the boss wants to know why you can't multitask, whether the project is really that urgent, and whether you're being a team player. If you'd simply said, "I won't be attending," without over-explaining, you might have avoided the debate altogether. It's not about being rude, it's about being clear. You have the right to make decisions for your own life without providing a PowerPoint presentation every time. The Stoic approach is this: decide what's right for you, act on it. Let the action stand on its own. Will people misunderstand? Absolutely. But here's the liberating part. You don't have to fix that. The people who truly care about you will either trust your judgment or ask thoughtful questions. The rest are just curious spectators or critics, and their approval isn't worth chasing. One of the worst traps you can fall into is explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. It's like trying to teach a cat how to bark. You can pour all your time and energy into it, but it will never happen, and you'll just frustrate yourself in the process. Instead, conserve your energy. When you stop explaining yourself to everyone, 3 things happen. You gain time. All those minutes spent defending your choices, you get them back. You gain peace. You no longer replaying conversations in your head, wondering if you made your case well enough. You gain power. Silence creates an air of confidence. It tells people you know what you're doing, and you don't need outside validation. Here's a simple rule you can apply starting today. If an explanation won't change the outcome, don't give it. Example: you decide to leave a group chat because it's full of gossip. You could write a long goodbye explaining why gossip is toxic and how you're focusing on positivity. Or you could quietly exit. The people who get it don't need an explanation. The people who don't get it will never be convinced anyway. Another tip: practice short answers without guilt. If someone asks why you're not doing something, your answer can be, "That doesn't work for me. Focusing on other priorities. No thanks." Notice there's no because. The more you practice this, the more natural it feels. One last story. I once knew a woman named Lisa who quit her high-paying corporate job to start a small landscaping business. People thought she was crazy. For months, she fielded questions. Why would you give up that salary? What if it fails? What will you do about health insurance? At first, she tried answering every question in detail, but eventually, she realized something. Most people weren't asking out of genuine care. They were projecting their own fears. So she stopped explaining. She'd simply smile and say, "It's the right move for me." Today, her business is thriving, and she's happier than ever. The Stoics would call that living according to your nature, making choices that align with your values and purpose, and letting the noise fade into the background. So here's your challenge. This week, resist the urge to explain every decision. Make your choice, state it simply, and move on. The less you justify yourself, the more you'll notice who respects your boundaries, and who only respected you when you were easy to sway. Stop explaining. Start living. And let your actions speak so loudly that you never have to defend them.